I'll get it in a minute. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. It's Tuesday, January 18th, having the meeting tonight because of the holiday yesterday. Appreciate everybody being here. We have tonight with us Pastor Derek Porter from Smyrna First United Methodist Church, 1315 Concord Road. Pastor, come on up, and I'll ask everybody to please rise for the invocation and pledge.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we thank you for this night. We thank you for the ability to come together. We have learned over the past 2 years just what a privilege that is. Gracious God, we continue to come and to serve our community and to serve you and to serve all in need. We gather as community, standing on the shoulders of saints and giants like Dr. King. Help us to continue to live out his legacy, to live out his dream, and to continue to be a community where all are welcome and all are loved. Gracious God, be with the council tonight. Hold them in the hollow of your hands, helping them to continue to make the right and good decisions. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Porter, for being here. Always good to have my pastor come and do the invocation and pledge. Next is agenda changes. We have none. I know there's a correction made on the consent agenda for the dates for the Oyster Fest, but I think that's been handled. Item 3 is the mayoral report. I have a couple of things tonight. Number one, just like we were the only city in the state to give vaccines provide vaccines for our citizens, we're now going to be the only city in the state to provide COVID testing and make it convenient for y'all to get COVID tests. I know that there's a lot of that going on right now, and at least for the next few weeks as we're going through this, we're going to try to make it as easy for y'all to get tested as possible. Look for notifications from the city in the next few days. We're hopefully to be up and running by the end of the week. First Baptist Church, Pastor Pennington is allowing us to use the parking lot across from Carmichael's and the church there. There'll be a tent, and it'll be by appointment. But look for information to be pushed out by the city to put that testing location up. I have a letter that I wrote that's going to be included in the water bill, and I want to go ahead and read that to y'all. It's kind of my wrapping up the year going into 2022 letter. Smyrna citizens, as the calendar turns to the new year, Smyrna has a lot to be proud of, and we also have a ton of great things ahead of us to look forward to in 2022. We have persevered through the global pandemic, and even with the current surge, the light at the end of the tunnel is not far off. We continue to provide excellent service to our residents, and in 2021 return to some of the programming that you all love, including the Jonquil Festival and the biggest Smyrna birthday celebration in our city's history. We capped off the year with a revamped Coming Home for the Holidays that turned our downtown into something like the scene out of a movie. We took care of the men and women who keep us safe with raises for public safety personnel twice in 2021, and I believe that we have the best police and fire departments anywhere in the country right here in Smyrna, Georgia. We move forward with plans to refresh and revitalize our downtown, completely overhaul South Cobb Drive between Windy Hill and Concord Road in Wards 3 and 5, bring in a new aquatic center in Ward 6, build a new splash pad in Ward 7, and approve the Emerson Center mixed-use development in Ward 1 near the Battery and the Quad interactive development in Ward 2. We've also planned for improvements to Concord Road and other measures to improve traffic flow and safety in Ward 4 and across the city. We began both short and long-term strategic planning for the first time in many years in Smyrna, redoubled efforts to promote economic development across the city, launched our racial trust building initiative, put a new focus on energy efficiency, and look forward to implementing a new Smyrna Arts District. We are currently also exploring the possibility of a Smyrna Arts and Culture Center. In 2022, we will bring you annual Smyrna events that are familiar to you and some that will be entirely new and exciting. And let me tell you all now, you won't want to miss our 150th birthday celebration. It's really going to be unbelievable. And it'll be in early October of 2022. I'm so thankful for the opportunity you've given me and my family to lead this city that we all call home. This is a special place, and the people right here in Smyrna, Georgia are the best anywhere. I always say there's two types of people in this world, those who live in Smyrna, Georgia, and those who wish that they did. Happy New Year to all of you and your families, and may this city and all of you be blessed in 2022. And a quick note on the South Cobb Drive and Aquatic Center, we'll be rolling out the initial concept plans for South Cobb Drive to the public here very soon and be getting public input. We're also in the process right now, people who are a lot smarter than me and deal with aquatic centers have that expertise, are putting together a list, I guess a menu, for lack of a better term, of options, whether it's a splash feature or a lap pool or a lazy river and those types of things, and the costs associated with each that we can roll out to the public and get your input so that we can give you what you want that space to look like. With that, I'll conclude my mayoral report. We have 3 issues under land issues, zonings, and annexations. Item A, 2021-600, is going to be tabled at the request of the applicant to February 7th, 2022 Mayor and Council meeting, and I'll need a motion to table, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Make a motion to table the item 4A.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Wheaton, second by Mr. Gould. All those in favor, please vote. That's approved 7-0. Thank you. Item B, 2021-598. This is a public hearing, zoning request Z21-016, allow rezoning from R15 to R8 for the development of 2 single-family homes at a density of 3.33 units per acre, 0.6 acres, land lot 450, 985 Church Street, Dogwood Family Homes. That's in Ward 3. Any background, Mr. Bennett?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dogwood Family Homes is requesting a rezoning from R15 residential to R8 residential for a 2-lot, single-family detached subdivision. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval by a vote of 5-0 at the December 13th, 2021 meeting. The zoning proposal is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and the future land use plan. Therefore, Community Development recommends approval of the rezoning from R15 to R8 with a density of 3.33 units per acre, 985 Church Street, with conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Rusty, you have a presentation for us?
Yes, sir. This request went to P&Z on December 13th. They recommended it for approval with a vote of 5-0. This property is located on Church Street. There's 1 single-family detached residence on the property. The applicant is proposing to demolish that existing home and build 2 new single-family homes. And they're proposing to change the zoning from R15 to R8. The subject property has a medium density residential land use designation. There is no request to change that designation with this zoning proposal. The medium density residential land use designation allows up to 6 units per acre. This proposed plan is 3.3 units per acre. So no change in the future land use map is needed for this zoning proposal. This is a proposed site plan. You got front entry homes that front onto Church Street. This is a proposed lot subdivision. They're requesting a front setback of 40 feet, side setback of 7.5, and a rear setback of 25, which is consistent with the R8 zoning district. They'll have front entry garages and driveways. They've got stormwater detention planned for the rear of the property. And then they'll provide a 5-foot right-of-way dedication in front of the property. There's an existing sidewalk there today. And with this request, there's no variances needed. It meets the standards for the R8 zoning district. Here's the proposed home elevations. This is what you would see from Church Street. And then picture of the subject property as it stands today. And then these are the adjacent properties on either side. Community Development is recommending approval of the requested zoning from R15 to R8 with a density of 3.3 units per acre for 2 single-family homes at 985 Church Street with the following conditions. We're recommending the stipulations in section 1201 of the zoning ordinance, which provides standard conditions related to the composition of the home, utilities being buried under site, traffic improvements, tree plan development, and then a planting schedule for the lots. In addition to that, we're requesting some special conditions. We've established the setbacks for the property, the minimum lot size, minimum lot width, and the minimum driveway length. In addition, we're requesting the right-of-way dedication as well as capping the height of the overall structure to 35 feet, and then making sure the development meets fire access requirements, sewer development improvements, and stormwater requirements as well. And finally, we're tying the development to the site plan submitted and the building elevation submitted. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Rusty?
Rusty, can you pull up the front elevation, please? I thought we had it on the screen here.
There you go.
Am I looking at that correctly, that there's actually no window on the main level?
And this, the applicant will probably have to answer that for you better, but it doesn't appear so, not on the first level.
Any other questions? I'd like to invite the applicant up.
First of all, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Mayor and Council of Happy New Year. I never know when to quit saying that. So I hadn't seen you guys since the first of the year, so Happy New Year. For the record, my name is Garvis Sams. I represent and have the distinct pleasure of representing Dogwood Homes in connection with this application. Actually, Dogwood Family Homes. It is a family business. I have Mr. Michael Jaffe, who is the principal of the business, here with me this evening, and he and I can respond to any questions. And yes, Mr. Lindley, there will be windows on the first floor and windows on the balance of it. When I first got that preliminary sketch, it was from a very renowned architectural firm, and I looked at the roof, and it looked like it was just a blank roof, but it's got shingles and everything. Those will be refined and subject to staff review and approval prior, obviously, to its implementation, after plan review, but before any dirt is moved on the site. And if you prefer that, I think we do this a lot in other jurisdictions. Certainly, if you personally, as sometimes the district commissioners in other jurisdictions do, would like to have the final review and approval of the architecture, that's fine with us as well. This is an application heard, considered, and approved unanimously 5-0 by the Planning Commission. Your staff has recommended approval. We didn't have any opposition at the Planning Commission level. I've heard and received some phone calls from some folks after the property was posted and letters went out and such, but we've been able to respond to the questions, mostly for informational purposes. I haven't encountered any objection. There's a lot of people here tonight. I don't know if anyone here is in opposition, but I kind of doubt it, considering, at least in terms of land use, this is a down zoning in terms of the designation on your future land use map. This is a 0.6 acre tract of land, and the house on it has good bones, but it just makes more sense to have 2 homes on the property. The architectural style and composition, as I said, could be subject to review by your community development director or by you as a mayor and city council. The price points, I know you don't legislate that, we don't stipulate to that, you can't impose it, but we're looking at price points between $750, $800, as you're seeing now with some of these lot splits that you have in the city. This is in a medium density residential, MEDR designation on the future land use map, as Rusty mentioned. It allows up to 6 units per acre. We're at 3.3. Obviously, this would probably indicate a change down to MOD or MOD, moderate density residential, but I don't think staff will do that commensurately, and I don't think they've asked for a fee to change the future land use map to change the future land use map designation. And if you look at the positioning of the subject property and what you have around it, RM12, 12 units per acre to the north, RM12 to the east, R15 to the west, RAD conditional or RDA conditional to the south. So they're mainly high density properties that surround this. If you're not familiar with Dogwood Homes and you have questions, and Mr. Jaffe can certainly answer those tonight, but they've been working in the Smyrna area. They've been concentrating on ensuring that the neighborhoods that they build in maintain the character that they're in, or complement it or exceed it, but not exceed it in such a dramatic way that it looks out of place. So this will be at the high end, high scale, residential construction, sustainable composition, and of course the architectural style and composition is attractive and commands the price points that I mentioned. I know you've got a lot on your agenda tonight, and I don't want to take an inordinate amount of your time, but I do want to say that preliminarily, we looked at trying to save as many trees as we could on the property there. There was a real nice sweet gum tree right in the middle, but it's irrevocably diseased, so it's coming down. And of course, you're probably aware the GTC came through there recently and took down a number of trees as well. These lots are going to be subdivided into 2 lots. One is 13,576 square feet, which is virtually the same size as Tract 1, which is 13,563 square feet, which both are just a skosh under what your R15 15,000 square foot lots would require. So with that being said, we do ask that you follow your planning commission's recommendation for approval, your staff's recommendation for approval. It is consistent with your future land use map, and your comp plan. And we are agreeable to all the stipulations and conditions which staff have imposed, and respectfully request that you approve it. And my client is here on the front row instead of the back row like a Baptist, waiting hopefully to miss the tithing plate. And I'm a Baptist, I can say that. So at this time, I'll take any questions from either the ward council person, Mr. Mayor, or you.
Any questions, Mr. Sams? I think you've covered it. No questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. I'd ask anybody who'd like to speak for or against this agenda item to come up now and be sworn in by our city attorney. Looks like you were right. Nobody here to comment. We'll close the public hearing. I'll turn it over to Mr. Lindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I have not, I've heard from folks the last couple of days, but I've not heard from anybody on this, and I think it looks like a good project. I do appreciate that we will have windows on the front. With that, motion do pass.
Have a motion to pass. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Wheaton. All those in favor, please vote. And that's approved 7-0.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item C, CVY 2022-01, approval of an abandonment of an alleyway in land lot 561 of the 17th District, 2nd Section, Cobb County, and quitclaim whatever interest of the city, if any, to the adjacent property owners to the center line, and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents. Mr. Bennett, the background, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Decades ago, an alley was used to service the existing neighborhood, but is no longer used by the city. The adjacent property owners have requested that the city release whatever interest it has, if any, in the strip through quitclaim deed. Releases to the adjoining owners, again to the center line of the area that was originally contemplated to be a road. This is consistent with city policy. Staff recommends approval of an abandonment of an alleyway in land lot 561 of the 17th District, 2nd Section, Cobb County, and quitclaim whatever interest to the city, if any, to the adjacent property owners.
All right, this is in Ward 3. Councilman Lindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A motion do pass as previously read and presented.
Have a motion do pass. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Welch. All those in favor, please vote. And that's approved 7-0. Thank you. Item 5 is privileged licenses. We have none. Item 6 is formal business. We have 5 items on formal business. The first 3 are something A, B, and C that we have to do every year in order to collect our 911 fees from the telephone providers. And we'll go through each one, but is there any other background you want to provide on that? Okay, yeah. Item A, Resolution 2022-01, approval of Resolution 2022-01 imposing a 911 charge on postpaid wireline, wireless, and voice over internet protocol telephone service at the answering point at the rate of $1.50 per month received by a municipality, and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents. Mr. Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Make a motion to approve item 6A, resolution 2022-01 as previously read.
Have a motion, seconded by Dr. Wheaton. All those in favor, please vote. It's approved 7-0. Item B, Resolution 2022-02, approval of Resolution 2022-02 imposing a 911 charge on prepaid wireless service at the retail point of sale at the rate of $1.50 per retail transaction, and revenues received by a municipality, and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents. Mr. Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Make a motion to approve item 6B, resolution 2022-02 as previously read.
I have a motion, seconded by Dr. Wheaton. All those in favor, please vote. And that's approved 7-0. And item C, Resolution 2022-03, approval of Resolution 2022-03 reaffirms the necessity for the $1.50 911 charge on telephone subscribers served by the enhanced 911 system for the fiscal year. Mr. Gould, last one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve item 6C, resolution 2022-03 as previously read.
That's seconded by Mr. Pickens. All those in favor, please vote. And that's approved 7-0. Item D, Grant 2022-01, approval of amendment number 2 to the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG Subrecipient Agreement number CV20-V20S8, to extend the termination date for the agreement to March 31st, 2022, and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents. Any background? Just
Yes, sir.
extending the deadline?
Just
or-
extending the deadline.
Just extending the deadline, okay. I'll have Austin Wagner handle this item, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just move to approve item 6D as previously read.
Okay. Seconded by Mr. Pickens. All those in favor, please vote. And that's approved 7-0. Item E, Resolution 2022-05, adopt a resolution 2022-05, approving a standard land sale agreement between the Smyrna Downtown Development Authority, the DDA, as seller, and Market Village Realty, LLC, or another entity controlled by the principals of that entity as purchaser, so that property may be developed into a brewery. This resolution also approves the transfer of whatever remaining interest the city has in the property to the DDA, so that the property may be sold in accordance with this agreement and developed into the brewery. Such a resolution is adopted so that the DDA may achieve its public purpose of promoting economic improvement and redevelopment within the city. And with this, I'll turn it over to Andrea Worthy, our Economic Development Director, for a presentation, followed by our City Attorney, Scott Cochran, to go over the terms of the contract.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am here this evening. I'm going to take my mask off first of all, because I don't like to talk with that on. But I'm here this evening to present to you some of the same presentation that we had at the town hall meeting and several other meetings that we've had over the past year with the public. But I wanted to make sure, in light of this evening's vote, that we have another opportunity from the public to hear about this particular project. So first of all, want to talk a little bit about why a unique local attraction like a brewery is being presented to you this evening. So the presence of a craft brewer in a community really sort of puts one on the map. They bring additional visitors to the area. They increase the benefit of the community's brand. Having these types of lifestyle amenities brings a lot of visitors to your downtowns, as proven by some other downtowns in the metro Atlanta area. The pictures here that I have put up show some other communities and how they've used it to enhance their brand, such as the Topside Tap Trail, which is a group that was formed by the city of Roswell, the city of Alpharetta, and the city of Sandy Springs to promote their downtowns. There's a picture here of Jekyll Brewing, which is located in downtown Alpharetta next to their green space and housing. And then there's also a picture here of a recent article that was in Atlanta Magazine that was promoting Cobb County and how Cobb Travel and Tourism is promoting a lot of the other breweries in Cobb County to the greater metro Atlanta area at large. One of the reasons they're so important to downtown revitalizations, they really add another layer of experience. And I have to steal a quote from our economic development officials in Swanee, where Stillfire is currently located. They refer to it as a third place. It's different than a restaurant. It's different than a coffee shop. It's really a community gathering place that invites a lot of other visitors to downtown. It serves as a community center where folks can meet up, increases foot traffic for other businesses in downtown, which I think is needed here in Smyrna. This picture here is a picture of Gate City, which is in downtown Roswell. They've expanded actually into a second location elsewhere in Roswell, but this is a picture of what the indoor of their facility looks like. I mean, frankly, breweries are also great for supporting local acts and events because, again, they are unique. They're trying to build on the uniqueness of an area. And in conversations with our other economic development officials in Cobb County, as well as Cherokee County and other areas, they talk about the number of visitors that are brought to downtown. And their brewery locations are averaging an additional 1,000 to 2,000 new visitors per week to their downtowns, again, benefiting other traffic. This picture here is a picture in downtown Woodstock, Reformation Brewery. Reformation actually started out in another location in Woodstock, started out in an industrial area and realized that was not really the proper business model because they benefit in selling their product from a downtown presence, people walking to and from just as much as the downtowns benefit from additional visitation coming to their areas. They have since relocated their main facility to downtown Woodstock and have found it to be a very successful venture there, located next door to a city park. So sometimes we hear, you know, again, there can be changes in the market always, but craft beer is pretty booming right now in Cobb and throughout the United States. Georgia has added over 100 new craft breweries since the laws were changed in 2011, but we still rank 48th per capita, so we got a lot of room to grow here. The industry had a $2 billion economic impact in Georgia. And then also, you know, at an individual level, this is the picture here is of Horned Owl Brewing, which is in downtown Kennesaw, located right off their main street and right next door to some residential properties. Again, another example of bringing folks to the downtown area that may not have been there before. Actually, you know, looking all around Cobb County, according to Cobb Travel and Tourism, by the end of this year, all cities with the exception of, hopefully not Smyrna, but with the exception of Smyrna and Austell actually have breweries planned for their downtown areas. So again, 12 beverage making sites here in the county currently. That includes breweries, distilleries, and wineries. These are all places that actually produce it and sell it on site. So they're not producing for distribution elsewhere. And again, at least another 3 facilities are planned to open this year. This particular picture is at Glover Park Brewery, which opened just in downtown Marietta, which opened just before the pandemic and has been very successful. They have the downstairs here that you see where the people are out front or actually out back. That's the brewery itself. And then upstairs they have another 5,000-foot event space been very successful according to Marietta city officials. Again, probably 2,000 visitors to downtown a week that come to this brewery and then go and shop and or 3/4 of those actually shop or go to another restaurant in downtown Marietta. So again, why downtown versus an industrial site? Again, these craft brewers are looking for an actual downtown location because they are not an industrial type of use. Industrial uses such as like a Sweetwater or whatnot are usually located in more of an industrial area where they're not dependent on selling the product to the folks there that are actually drinking it. They're the folks that are distributing it for distribution throughout the United States. Being located downtown is really is really important for their success. Again, that's one of the reasons Reformation, which again is another picture of downtown Woodstock, and Reformation Brewery decided to relocate to downtown Woodstock because they see the people in downtown as being important to their success. And again, it's a craft brewery. There are compatible uses with a mixed-use area. They are safe. There are no odors related to these types of facilities. And then speaking specifically here in Smyrna about reinvestment and revitalization in downtown. We have a great plan here that was started, a generation and a half ago, really, for the downtown, and we are the beneficiaries of sitting in that here in City Hall today. And it was a great plan, but frankly, the market has changed in 26 years. This was a cutting-edge facility that was built and redeveloped in downtown at that time. And if you were building it today, you would do it a lot differently. When I was here before 10 years ago, we would lead different municipalities on tours of downtown, and they would all say, what's the secret to success and what would you do differently? And the answer 10 years ago is still the same today. We would add more commercial space in downtown because frankly, we don't generate a whole lot of visitors related to municipal uses such as City Hall. So the bold plan that was considered here by the city recognized exactly that Smyrna has grown, that since the original plan was put in place, Jonquil and Belmont have redeveloped, which has really changed the market dynamics here. And the bold plan recommended a couple of things: reactivating the public event space in downtown, which you all have already approved and is moving forward with the new green space in downtown. It actually also recommended adding public parking facilities and pedestrian improvements, which are also underway. And it also recommended adding commercial space and visitors to downtown. And I believe that this particular plan does exactly that. I would like, actually, Scott, if you want to, I think it's probably appropriate for you to review the portions of the contract. And then Aaron is here for questions.
Sure. Be happy to do that. So once this got kind of moving along to where it looked like we potentially had a deal, I was asked to put together a contract. And what I did was I started with kind of a generic contract that we use all the time for land sales, right? And so it even is called a standard land sale agreement. The property has been in the name of the Downtown Development Authority since 1990, right? For 32 years. It has been there, but the city, what's on the agenda tonight is for the city to approve the contract between the Downtown Development Authority and the entity that Stillfire has formed to hold this asset if it goes through, if the vote goes through. So the contract has, we tried to address the concerns that we were hearing as a result of public input and talking with council members and constituents and things. And so one of the things is that, well, because it's a piece of property that's owned by the city that's in an area where the public buildings are, what can we do to try to make sure that we can control what actually goes here? So we put in the contract that the requirements of what would be built. It would be built, this brewery would be built substantially in compliance with plans that we've seen, except that it would be, and this was a result of some of the public meetings we had and some of the input. A lot of the input was, it's just too big. So we changed the original conceptual plan to be, rather than 3 stories, to be 2 stories. And so the contract is that the building will be no larger than 3 stories. That's 15,000 to 16,000 square feet, I think, ballpark.
which is a good bit smaller than what was originally planned. They've knocked out some of the space that was going to be for events and that sort of thing, from what I understand. And another thing we've added to the conceptual plan is, and this was a result of some of the input that came from the public, is an option for like a restaurant concept there. It's not going to be wouldn't be a full sit-down restaurant, but there's always been a concept of food trucks. But now, in addition to the food trucks, the idea would there be like a pizza oven that would be there permanently, that would be leased to a third party, that would be another place to have food there. So those are a couple of changes that have come about, I guess, since all the public meetings. One of the other things is that trying to figure out how we can control this due to this, the strategic location of this spot, so close to the other public buildings. And so first there's an idea, well, could we lease it to these people rather than sell it? And we talked about that, negotiated some with that, and they convinced us that them investing $7 million-ish in this property, that the lease concept really wouldn't work, that they weren't really interested in that sort of an investment, which, by the way, my understanding would be the most expensive building in the downtown area. But that sort of arrangement just wouldn't work with them because they're going to put such a financial commitment to it. So we started thinking, well, what can we accomplish with get the equivalent we would get with a lease, but have a sale? What could we do to have the equivalent as far as control? And so what we decided we could do is we could come up with an idea where we have a sale, but we have all kinds of provisions that allow us to come back and repurchase the property. One is if they don't do anything within a certain amount of time, then we get to buy it back for the amount that we sold it to them for, because we sold it to be built for this brewery that they promised to build, and I think they would. But if strange things happened, and if it does, we've got that assurance that we can buy back, okay? Another assurance is, well, what if they decide to flip it, to sell it to somebody else, if they get it established? Well, then we've got a right of first refusal to match that if we don't like what's going on there. So we've got the control as a zoning authority, because, now the property's public property, which is not subject to zoning, but once it goes from public to privately owned, it goes on the tax digest, for one, and it also is subject to our zoning. So we've got zoning control, we've got this buyback provision, we got this right of first refusal. Then we put 24 stipulations in the contract that will be added to the deed records that prohibit uses that they could do in the current zoning. And we went a step further. We said, well, what if another administration down the road comes in and they decide to rezone this property? Well, and this is really far-fetched, but we said, okay, what we'll do to address that contingency is we'll put deed restrictions on, which means that even if the zoning would allow something, they're deed restricted. The deed wouldn't allow them to do this, kind of like your restrictive covenants in a subdivision. So we thought with the buyback potential and the right of first refusal potential and the zoning oversight and the deed restrictions, that we accomplished what we were trying to accomplish through the discussions on a lease on the front end. So we took the standard real estate agreement, kept everything pretty much standard, and then all the things I'm talking about now we added as a special stipulations. And so that's pretty much it. Start standard and get, really unique. I don't know that I've seen an agreement quite like this, but I think it works, and I think we all together think that it works.
Any questions of Scott from the council before we bring up the applicant?
I have one of Scott. Scott, you mentioned the buyback, and you said something about flipping, which is the first time I've ever thought about this. But if we sell the property to this group for the $600,000 as proposed, and 2 days later they decide, okay, we've changed our mind, we're going to flip this property, which clause comes into effect? Is it the buyback for the original amount, or is it the right of last refusal?
If they, in that scenario, it would be the right of first refusal.
So if they decide to sell it for $1 million, 2 days later, we're hung out there for $1 million. Would that be correct?
Well, no, because I don't think anybody's going to pay. I don't think, why would somebody pay $1 million for property that's not worth $1 million?
Well, I'm just asking. I mean, if it were to flip 2 days later, we have to come up with the additional monies and not our original amount. Is that?
Yeah, but we based our sales price on on an appraisal, right? And so I don't think the market is going to support a closing at the appraised value and then a subsequent flip for much more than the appraised, any more than the appraised value. And we own property, we own property all around this. I mean, that whoever would want to buy this property is going to have to deal with us because we own all the other stuff right around it.
Any other questions of Mr. Cochran? Tim?
Scott, could you just, question came up about the entity?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Okay, so they formed an entity to hold this property called Market Village Realty Inc. It's the same people involved in the entity that we've been dealing with. They just formed. It's pretty common. I mean, my office has an entity that owns it, but it's me. So it's the same sort of thing.
So who, you said they formed an entity? Who is that formed the entity, Scott?
It's the same people we've been dealing with from day one. It's Aaron and his uncle, John. And he can answer questions. He's probably better at answering questions about that kind of thing than I am, but same folks that are in Stillfire up in Swanee.
And also the contract says this Market Village Realty LLC or another entity. So
yeah, that was that was my writing. What I wanted to do is I kind of acknowledge that they would probably want to have a single asset entity that on this, meaning an entity they form that just holds this asset, which that's kind of standard. And I thought that they might decide to form another entity, and I didn't want to have to come back to y'all for that. So I said either this entity or another entity that's controlled by the same people. That was my that was the point. I threw that in. Paranoia from the lawyer.
Any other questions on the contract from council? Before we bring up the applicant? No? Aaron, you want to come up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to the council for hearing us tonight. Here we are proposing the brewery here in Market Village. We've had some conversations since the town hall about a month ago. We listened to a lot of the town's input, and to that degree, as Scott had mentioned, we made a couple of changes, a couple of pretty drastic changes, one being the size of the building, reducing that from 3 stories to 2. There was some concern from folks about the size of the building, but also the ability to keep it full and operating at an efficient level. So we heard that and we agreed. In addition to that, there was some conversation about the food trucks and the ability to have food on site at all times and not relying on the food trucks like we do in Swanee all the time, because there are maybe people that want to come and have food that don't want to enjoy the beer. And so we heard that, and so we have proposed to the city in our concept a permanent food source. It would be typically a walk-up window, maybe pizza. We haven't landed on the exact type of food, but something in that vein, very easy and quality to go with Stillfire and our product. Whoever we decide to partner with, we will make sure that food is just as good as we believe we are. To that end, we're really looking forward to bringing that third place and community to the downtown here. We look forward to partnering with the other local businesses and restaurants, the churches, the community center, the youth groups, all of those things and providing a real sense of community to the city of Smyrna. We're about charity, we're about community, we're about neighborly. Anything that you can do in terms of social recreation, we want to provide. Events, children's birthdays, pet friendly, elderly. We really believe that we can cater to anybody's wants and desires and really lift up this community as a whole. With that, I'll open up for questions.
Thank you, Aaron. Any questions of Aaron? I know that this is not the first time, second time, third time, fourth time, or fifth time he's been in front of us. So I know we're all familiar with the plan and the contract. But if there's any additional questions or anything of him, this is the time to ask.
Question, Mr. Mayor. Just
Mr. Gould?
Aaron, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate the work that you've put into this. And, just in conversations with residents and emails we get, right? So just touch on the LLC that you formed. And I understand it. I have a commercial building and an LLC, and I get it. So there's no questions around that. But, the whole conversation's been still fire. So could you just touch on who the ownership is and how that ties into, because a lot of times it's just an explanation for folks who aren't.
Yes, Stillfire is owned by my aunt and uncle, John and Lori Biscus, and then my other two partners, Randall and Angie Bugler, who are Swanee residents. They started the Swanee Magazine, the Swanee Beer Festival up there. That's our tie to Swanee and why that was our first location. My aunt and uncle live up in Buford. I recently moved to Smyrna, right by Ben's Crab Shack and behind Love Street, with my fiance about 6 months ago. So I'm a Smyrna resident. Those are the owners. The reason for the forming of the entity was the exact reason you just mentioned and Scott mentioned. It's pretty common practice for real estate to be under a separate entity that is wholly owned by my uncle, John Biscus. That was set up months ago in anticipation that should this pass, that we would be able to contract through that entity, and Stillfire would be the subtenant of, or would lease from the real estate company. Pretty standard.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. And just one last question for you. The other issue that I really appreciate you all making some movement on is food on the inside, right? And you described that a little bit. And if you don't mind, if you could just expand on it as best you can, because it's an issue that's been asked a lot about, and just want to make sure you have a chance to highlight it best you can.
Yeah, the food source, we really contemplated, based on lots of feedback, about having something there permanent that would be able to provide food day and night, 7 days a week, or whenever we're open. We believe it won't be a full service kitchen like Scott had mentioned. It's not going to be a sit-down restaurant. We are going to retain the brewery aspect and feel. We'll still be dog friendly. Dogs will still be able to enter the premise. It will be a structure that will basically have a walk-up window to where no different than a food truck. It's essentially, in concept, a permanent food truck. But it will be a partner that is a restaurateur, because we are not restaurateurs. We do not know anything about upkeep of a kitchen and maintaining a restaurant. So we'll find a very quality partner to lease that space out and run that kitchen. It'll be a walk-up window, either online ordering QR codes, and then you go pick it up at the window, or you can order at the window, get a buzzer, vice versa. You can grab the food and take it out into the park. You can take it across the street. You can take it into the brewery. And it also, we would still keep the food truck concept with the 2 bay doors from the original proposal. That won't change. We actually see this as being an addition to that, to where you have, say, a permanent pizza place, but then you also have a couple different options on the food trucks, Vietnamese or what have you. Could be rotating based on the night. So you have a staple quality food source that's always there that you can rely on, and then also the food truck aspect to give you that revolving door.
I appreciate it's hard to run a brewery, right? Run the physical plant and have a whole different skill set of running a restaurant. So I appreciate you teaming up with somebody who does, who's a professional in that area, and that's what they do for a living. So that makes sense to me. Thanks.
The other question that I've been asked is, what's it going to look like now that it's 2 stories rather than 3? And I think the answer is exactly what y'all put forward. Just the same look, same feel. I know you still got to go through the Urban Design Commission, but it's just 1 story less.
That's right. The concept drawing that we've provided in the rendering, that is still the goal in terms of aesthetic and what it will look like, still very high-end. All we're really doing is removing the second story that we had originally proposed, which was set aside more for private event space. What we've realized is that there's more than enough space in the two-story concept to partition off areas in order to do private events, birthday parties, stuff like that. We maybe don't need that second story, and that way we're able to condense everything a little bit more. But the aesthetic and feel for what we've provided so far is still the goal.
Still have the rooftop, still
Yes,
have.
still the rooftop and still the main floor brewery. Yep.
Other questions of Aaron?
I have a question, and I'm not sure if it would be Mr. Begis that would answer it or somebody on the Smyrna staff, but it has to do with the part of the contract that I have read. It references a conceptual plan by AI3 dated May 13, 2021. I may have seen it or may not, but the plan that I know that I saw was dated sometime in April. So I don't know that I've seen that, and then it also references, it does mention the two levels, and then it says the city will develop an adjoining park substantially as depicted in the plan. But that is not something that I really feel like I've seen as far as a plan for that park, and also a cost estimate for that park that the citizens or taxpayers will be responsible for.
I can answer about the park. As you know, when we sat in the room with Stillfire, when they first brought this to us, the idea would be to take the proceeds of the land sale and put it into the public park, and it'll probably be, I don't know what they're still working on the cost estimate. We'll cross that bridge for the park and go through that debate in the next few weeks.
I hear what you're saying, but I think we just approved a park of, 6.5 million that's right there as well, and now we're going to
Scott, you want to talk about the provision in the contract related to the park?
Sure. The details on the park are for further debate or discussion or whatever it'll end up being. But yeah, we've agreed to a park, and it's in concept, and that's all this is. It just says that we will build that they'll build the brewery building in generally according to the concept shown on this plan, and we'll build the park generally according to that same concept.
Thank you.
And well, the park will have to be bid out, and with specs and all that. I mean, there's a whole lot that has yet to come on the park. I mean, it's we're agreeing to a concept. We're not agreeing to a final plan of a park. That we'll request bids, and we'll take them, and we'll sort through them,
And
and
that
we'll award it.
that concept included, based on the conversation that we all had as a council initially, that it will have a playground, a stage feature with a backdrop of a screen, and then a pet-friendly area. And that'll be on the southern end, which is, I guess, about 0.4 acres. Is that right? That's the rest of the property that's not being developed. Yeah. So that'll be a public amenity.
I understand that I've been, it's been communicated that the proceeds from the sale of the land will go toward the park. But if the park should cost more than the proceeds from the sale of the land, where will the funds come from for the park?
That'll have to be a council decision and debate, and we'll have that debate in the next few weeks.
But
Yet we'll be committing to it, but okay.
No, we're not committing to the park. We're not committing to anything other than a concept. And we're not committing to anything other than a concept. We're not obligated to commit funds in any regard right now. That's for another day.
Mr. Cochran, could the contract be modified to include a provision that the cost of the park not to exceed the purchase price of the property?
I think we'd be doing a disservice to the citizens if that was the case. I mean, I think it's this council's prerogative to talk about what that would look like and what amenities you want to put in there. And it's, if 600,000 covers it, that's great. If it doesn't, then I think we probably need to figure out what.
I mean, I don't see
I mean,
how you would do anything that detailed until you get a plan and send it out for bid.
And we
And
haven't
get
even had
their bids
we have a
back.
concept, not anything more than that at the moment. But we'll have the opportunity to talk about that and debate that moving forward.
But we're going to vote here tonight to approve this contract with the inclusion of a park that we don't know the cost of, and we're not going to put any stipulations for a maximum cost of the park. Is that correct?
No.
Is that stated correctly, Scott?
Yeah. Yeah, conceptually, we build a park, just like conceptually, they're gonna build a brewery, and they don't know the exact cost of the brewery either. You know, yeah, conceptually, and who knows, I have no idea what the park will cost. Y'all have to, you'll have to discuss that at the appropriate time and decide what to do.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I wanted to ask Mr. B just another question. You mentioned that the building is being reduced to 2 levels. I know that there was much discussion about what the 3 levels would be, so what are the 2 levels now going to be?
It would be a first floor brewery similar to the concept that we have currently in Swanee. And then the second story would be a rooftop indoor-outdoor area. Those are the 2 levels.
Will it be an event space, or will it be I think before I heard discussion also about a place for 21 and older.
We had discussed that operationally for us, if we wanted to include that. That is still up in the air, and actually, since our town hall and the gentleman that raised that point last time, it actually made us ponder and think, we'll let people decide if they want to go upstairs or downstairs. That's not included in the concept currently, no.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Derek.
Mr. Wagner.
I guess it might be more for Scott, but just on the concept. Sorry, Scott. On the park portion of this. So, I mean, in theory, just to play out the hypothetical, I'm not saying that this is what the city would choose to do, but if we get a concept of a park and it's more than the sale price and we decide, hey, we're not going to do that, what are the ramifications of us choosing to either, 1, not build a park, or 2, do something that's maybe like we only can do half of what the initial concept was? Like, what are the ramifications from our end on if we decide that the financial decision is,
I mean,
we're not going to do the
before
full
you-
concept because say it costs $1 million and we only want to spend $600,000.
Before you answer, let's all remember that when we had the initial discussion with these guys, and we all sat in the room and we said we're going to explore this farther and we're going to do a letter of intent, the brewery and the park were included in that whole discussion. So, my take would be to do at least the 600,000 and then have the debate on whether we want to put more into it, just depending on what we want to put into the park itself.
Right. And
So
I'm not,
with that, I'll answer Mr. Wagner's question.
to be clear, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that part. I'm saying, like, if the $600,000, if we get to it, we know how building costs are right now. There's things, we get the $600,000 and it's really only like, a few parts of the park because it's going to cost extra money to level it out. Whatever the problem is, we know how costs can be right now. But let's say the $600,000 that we put forward to it isn't anywhere close to what the concept originally was. What happens? I just want to play out that hypothetical so we're clear about it here in this group that what are the ramifications if we decide to do something where it's like we don't get the stage, we don't get the playground, we don't get the stuff, we get some picnic tables, whatever, that's what we can do. I'm not saying that's what it is, but in theory, hypothetically, what are the ramifications?
In practical terms, that probably result in killing the deal because the timing will be such that we would have made that decision likely before there's a closing. And so if that doesn't happen, I don't want to speak for these guys, but you know, it's always been part of the deal is that the park is there, right? And so, if we decided to not build or to scale down, the park, then, you know, that's, I would imagine that's a material part of the deal, you know, so.
And I can't imagine
I
any
didn't hear
scenario
what
where
you
we
said.
wouldn't continue with the park, since that's been, like you said, part of it all the way.
Yeah, and just like, again, in theory, if we're saying like, okay, we'll put the $600,000 towards it now, and we can do phase one. And if there's a pool of money available later, or we figure out what it is, or hoping that building costs come down, and there's an opportunity to do something later, is there a date by which we need to have committed to the park, or committed to the final plan, or have finished the park? I mean, I just want to.
Now, all the park is to be discussed when it's the center item on an agenda, and we have the materials related to that that are handy, right? So it's kind of hard in advance to you know, say, well, what would happen if this or this or this, or if it comes back, you know, because who knows what the net result of the engineering and the planning for the park will be. I mean, what I suspect will happen is that we'll have we'll sit down, the professionals, I don't know if somebody in-house or with Croy or both or with Pond or whatever, and they'll come up with a conceptual plan for the park. With a more detailed plan for the park, and then once they get that there, then they'll solicit bids, and then we'll see what the bidding, you know, what kind of bids we get. And, you know, if the numbers come back, you know, in such a way that you guys, after you have an opportunity to vote on those numbers, decide to vote against it, then we'll have to regroup. I mean, that's the reality. But we've, you know, from day one, there's been a conceptual idea of the park, but the cost is, you know, I mean, I've never thought, in just from my standpoint, I've never thought that the deal was that you take the exact purchase price and that's the exact amount for the park. Because we didn't know the amount of the park. But I mean, you know, it's those costs will be what they are, and we'll have to do some
Right.
thought about it. You
Yeah,
know.
I just wanted to go through that hypothetical just so we could all be on the same page about.
Right.
I think the quick answer is no, there's not a date that ties you guys to having to do it by a certain date.
But I'd like to, you know, I'd like to get the folks that are experts in that area to give us cost for those things rather quickly so that we can, you know, I mean, Stillfire is, you know, if this is approved, Stillfire has been ready and willing and waiting to start. They're ready to get shovels in the ground. You know, so the quicker we can do that and get the rest of that deal put together, that'd be great.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment on the park?
Mr. Gould.
So I think, as you just mentioned, Mr. Mayor, we haven't seen, I think we have Pond and Associates is working on designs, if I think that's right. And so I assume they'll come back with some choices and some options
I
and
hope
things
it'll be
like that, right?
relatively soon. Yeah, that would be.
Right.
Pond
So
is working
Susan,
on-
if you don't mind, just real quick. So if, I mean, just as we do on anything, we'll have some options in front of us. But I think one of the key things is, separate from Stillfire, we want to build a park that is appealing and satisfactory to our residents. And so if that's $600,000, that's great. If there's enough features in there and it deems that it's worthy of more investment from the city to create an atmosphere in a park that's useful and engaging for our residents, well, then that's a good discussion for us to have. So, yeah, I look forward to seeing what Pond comes back with, and we'll have a good, robust discussion around that.
Well, I just want to comment that this is the first time I've heard that Pond has been contracted to design a park for the city, for this property.
Yeah, Ms. Wilkinson, the only conversation that administration has had with Pond was an approximate cost that they would charge to design a park. There's been no information given to Pond to carry out any type of work.
No.
Nor any agreement signed with Pond.
Mayor,
Sure.
I guess part of my issue here on this particular item is this is the first discussion we as a council have had regarding what happens if we go over the 600,000. In the preliminary document that we saw, it reflected that the 600,000 purchase price would go back to building the park. There's never been any discussion of what happens if it goes over, and this is the first time we've talked about.
That was never a ceiling price. That the 600,000 would go towards the park, and that would be a discussion for council on what we want to commit to that park, what we want it to be for our citizens. That is a discussion, like Scott said, for another day.
We agreed in concept to take the 600,000 and put it back into the park.
That's right.
But nothing over and above that amount.
Right, we haven't had that discussion yet. That is for another day, relatively soon. I'm hoping if we can get numbers back for for a proposal for a park, what those features will look like, the concept will look like.
So I want to ask a question of Joe. You said that you had reached out to PUN about an estimate for designing a park. Have you gotten that estimate?
I do it somewhere in my email. I can forward it to you. The question was, would this be something that we would need to send out RFP on for the park design, or would that cost come below the requirements of an RFP? That was the context of the question to PUN. And I'll get that to you.
I will also say, though, that when I read the document here, the city will develop an adjoining park substantially as depicted in the plan.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
This is in Mr. Lindley's ward. I'll turn it over to Mr. Lindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'm going to reserve my comments until the rest of council in keeping with the next steps in a motion. So I will defer to council members.
Mr. Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to say I am not opposed to this brewery. Now, I've stated this many times. I'm opposed to the brewery and the location that it's being put in, or being proposed to be put in. And you know, I put together a little something, and I look back and I said, you know, a little over 25 years ago, the Smyrna City Council had a vision to transform our downtown from a rundown, almost blighted area into an area that won national awards for creativity and foresight. They, for some reason, left a single lot in front of the community center vacant, likely anticipating the need to expand the city center in some way by adding another city structure. I don't know exactly what they had in mind, but I'm certain that they didn't have in mind to put a brewery on that location. I'm also certain that the city council that had the foresight to rejuvenate the downtown would not allow a brewery to be placed on that lot now. The site is in a prime location for some type of expansion of city services, and I guess my personal, you know, I'd love to see us put an aquatic center on that location, especially considering that we're going to build a parking deck, you know, very nearby. There's room on the site to put it there. I've heard mentioned that the cost of the aquatic center is too expensive, and it is an expensive venture, but we provide services to our citizens, and that's what we're supposed to do. The parking deck would be much more appealing if the deck were being used by people enjoying themselves at a city-owned property rather than a privately owned business, such as the proposed brewery. Whatever would be the best for the citizens is what I'd like to see built on that site. I've received several emails from people in support of the brewery. Some support the idea, claiming that the brewery will bring new life and activity into the downtown area. I think it will bring some new people into the downtown area. Others point out that the fact that the business will increase our tax base and help the city with future budget shortfalls, and it'll just bring in additional money to the city. Finally, others support the brewery simply as a place to go with their family and gather. And these aren't bad ideas, but I can't speak to the validity of any of these. I can tell you that the distance between the proposed parking deck that we're showing and the existing downtown businesses is in excess of a quarter of a mile, meaning somebody's going to park their car in the parking deck, walk across the street to the brewery, and then walk to Atkins Park or Zuka to have dinner, and then they're going to walk that quarter mile back to their car. I just don't see that happening, and we have a parking problem in the existing parking areas we have already. So I don't really see it giving us a big boost to our main core of the downtown area. As for the tax increases, you know, I feel like that the increase in the value of the property will increase what we're going to get out of taxes over the next 5 years. So, and this is just my own personal opinion, but I don't believe that a brewery is a place for family gatherings. In my opinion, the city negotiated poorly with the proposed buyers, essentially giving them everything they wanted. The city wanted to lease it. The buyers wanted to buy it. We agreed to sell it. Several references were made to another location. They said it's here or nowhere. And looks like we're agreeing to giving them, you know, it's going to be there. That's what they wanted. I suggested that the brewery pay for the park so that the city would gain some revenue from the sale anyway. And the issue was never discussed in a public meeting to any extent. The city's given the purchaser everything they want. They have conceded that we're going to reduce the size of the lot, the building from 30,000 or 28,000 down to 15,000. But, and they're going to put in a leased out kitchen per se so that there'll be food. But that's not much of a concession. We're still giving up the best lot in downtown Smyrna. The city has included a repurchase clause in the contract, and the problem is if the brewery is constructed, we'll be faced with the repurchase of the new appraised property. And what do we want with the brewery if it does not make it 5 years from now? If that, craft beers fall off the best thing since sliced bread, we're faced with the purchase of a property that we really don't want. Essentially, the vote here tonight is to sell the property to the prospective buyers and agree that the city gets nothing in return. We're selling the property for $600,000, and we've agreed to put $600,000 at a minimum. I take that back. We've agreed initially to put $600,000 into a park. And then we've discussed here tonight that the price may exceed $600,000, so the brewery may actually cost us money. And we're going to build a $3 million parking deck across the street so that the patrons will have a place to park. I may not be the smartest one sitting up here tonight, but in my lifetime, I bought and sold a couple of dozen pieces of real estate, and this is the sweetest deal I've ever seen.
Mr. Welch, you know as well as I do that parking deck was done way before any of this came to us, so don't try to tie that to this. You know better than that, and that is misinformation for the public. We approved that long before Stillfire even came and knocked on our door, and you know that.
We did.
So don't say that it's for those patrons. That was for our downtown. And I know you don't like the location, but to tie it to this development is just, that's just disingenuous.
I think I have the floor. this deal's not for the city. I obviously will be voting in opposition to the sale, and I appeal to my fellow council members to do the same. Thank you.
Ms. Wilkinson.
Well, so first I'd like to thank all the citizens for their feedback and comments. It's very clear there's been a lot of passion around this issue. You know what, I think I'll take this off while I talk, sorry.
Audience to please hold any comments or applause or any kind of that till we're done with our comments, please. Thank you.
Okay. Anyway, so there's been a lot of moving parts to this whole process. And from my view and my perspective, this process has been flawed from the beginning and far from transparent. And I think some of the things that I learned tonight are evident of that. And then some of the things I just learned this on Thursday night are also evident of that. And I could provide you a long list of sound reasons why I oppose the sale. I could reiterate a lot of things that my fellow council person said. You know, I don't think that the selling this public land next to the community center is the best place. I'm not opposed to a brewery, but I just feel, you know, really strongly that that's not the best place. But also, I'd like to talk about, you know, the documents that we received on Thursday night. You know, we initially didn't even get the contract, and then I had requested to look at the contract, which I was able to look at after our meeting and over the weekend, and you know, and see some of these things that I have questions about in it, and it's been you know, difficult. But anyway, I'm now being asked to approve a resolution for the conveyance of this public land and the sale of the public green space. After an LOI between the city of Smyrna and Stillfire Brewing back in June, and months of aggressively promoting Stillfire Brewing Company as the buyer of the property, the documents that I received on Thursday night at this 11th hour of the project do not mention Stillfire at all. We are being asked to approve this sales agreement and resolution, which does not mention Stillfire, but a Market Village Realty LLC or another entity. And, you know, I think there's some information there that I just feel like I'm not been privy to. I heard what other people have said, but I've also learned about information that's been discussed that hasn't been, you know, provided to the council at a council meeting. Anyway, furthermore, this sale agreement stipulates and encumbers the taxpayers to build a purpose-built park, and we have not been provided the plans nor the cost estimates for this purpose-built park. And for all of these reasons and more that Councilman Welch had talked about, I feel that I must vote no. But I'm only one vote, and even though I will cast my vote with a clear conscience tonight, my integrity, my accountability to my constituents, and my support of the Smyrna Code of Ethics is more important than supporting a plan to sell off public land to an unknown entity, and a plan I believe is breaching the public's trust in us and diminishes the power of the citizens to determine the future of our city. Thank you.
Mr. Gould?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have had a chance to talk to quite a few folks about this, some folks who are opposed and some who are supportive of the concept. And I've tried to be pretty consistent in my thought process around it. And you know, probably in any kind of economic development deal, there's a lot of moving parts, and there's always things you can point to that could be done better or differently, or question, you know, what if this happens, what if that happens, right? But the two key motivators for me are, number one, economic development, and then two, helping grow the downtown area. So when I ran for council, these were two things that I heard a lot, right? Well, how come we don't have more restaurants in the downtown? How come we have, I like Spectrum Cable, they're a great company, but why do we have a Spectrum Cable store in our downtown? Why do we have a realty store right next to the fountain? Well, the main reason is because we don't have enough foot traffic in the downtown. That's why all these businesses would be here already. So when the opportunity came for still fire or microbrewery that has a track record, not only the business, but just the business segment itself has a track record of bringing foot traffic to an area, it makes sense. It makes sense to me. So from a ability to bring what folks ask for consistently, which are, again, more restaurants, a variety of retail, art shops. I mean, even now, so far, we have a new table furniture store downtown, right? That's only going to survive if we have out-of-town folks coming to shop at it. By the way, Tabletop Dan's a great company. I just ordered a table there. So, so again, economic development, right? That's key aspect for me. Secondly is the green space. That's been empty for 30 years. It's been empty for 30 years. It wasn't built on for a reason. It was left that way in anticipation of some development. And even, Mr. Welch's passionate remarks, I think he's incorrect, that there's renderings from back in the day that show that to be a commercial property. So there wasn't any anticipation, and as far as I know, of turning that into another city functional building. There's been calls for expanding the community center. Two things there. One, if that ever was to come to fruition, that's years down the road. And secondly, it probably would not happen in the downtown area. A vast majority of residents don't live here in the downtown. They live in Ward 6, Ward 7, somewhere else. So another public use is probably not the ideal use for that green space. I guess my last point is I do appreciate the spirited debate around this. It definitely does help for a better decision in the end, and it's a good tension to have. For the most part, I think it's been, my own personal opinion, it's been cordial. Not cordial's not the right word, but even when they're spirited. But one thing I just do ask, make sure we don't want to turn into a national or state type environment where we're vilifying other folks and whatnot, right? We all live together, and in the end, ultimately, I do think we want the same thing for the city. We just want a better end product in this case. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I do look forward to voting in favor for this project.
Thank you, Mr. Gould. I'm going to allow all council members to speak before I go back to those that have spoken before. Mr. Wagner?
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Throughout this process, we've seen a lot of, I think the word's been used, spirited debate and other conversations. I think it's important to frame the decision-making in this on what we're looking for in the downtown. I think Councilmember Gould talks about economic development, revitalizing downtown, getting more foot traffic. These are all things that, I know he said he heard when he ran. I don't know if he heard it when he ran unopposed, but
did you run unopposed?
We heard, those of us who ran once or twice in the same year heard a lot about downtown, a lot about revitalizing, a lot about getting some energy into downtown, because what downtowns are supposed to be. Downtowns are meant to be the place that have some of the best energy in the city. And the one thing that we've heard and that I've felt, I come to downtown as well, is that there's a lack of that. One of the things we wanted to try to do, what I wanted to try to do, was to create a more pedestrian-friendly place, create a place where there was community gathering spots. I think it's one of the first kind of phrases I talked about with the mayor, talked about with community development and other members of council, that we needed more places in Smyrna that the community could come together. And this isn't the only place that can happen. We're talking about a larger picture of what downtown might look like to try to get community to come together. And here's what I'd say about the award-winning downtown. I think it was great. It's one of the reasons that I moved here. But decisions made a generation ago were made a generation ago. We can make changes. We can make decisions and things about for the future and what we think can happen now and what we might need for the next generation and the generations after that, because we know the decisions that we make up here impact future generations a lot more than any of us individually. The decisions we make are going to last. So we've got to be smart. We've got to think about it. And I know some people are going to take that as, well, we should just say no to this and then leave it for some civic space. I agree with Councilmember Gould. I think if there's going to be more civic space, we do it in a place that made more sense, that expanded the footprint of the city services to more of the actual city. a lot of people don't even realize that the parts, and I may, be speaking over Councilmember Wheaton a little bit, but there's a lot of people that don't know that other parts of Smyrna are in Smyrna because there's no city buildings on there, there's nothing down there, there's not a presence. I think if we're going to expand civic buildings, that would make sense to expand the footprint to other parts of the city. So just from that perspective, I think the brewery here, we've talked a lot about the contract. I talked a lot about it with Scott. It was one of the things that I talked about with the mayor and with the city attorney about ensuring that the contract made sense and that the contract protected the city in ways that I think were good. Because I think looking at a brewery, looking at that, it is a third place. It is a place that people can go and gather. It may not be everyone's place that they want to go, but a significant number of people enjoy going to a place like that, whether they drink or not. I know plenty of people who have gone who don't drink that, it's a common place that they can go. So I see it checking the boxes on economic development, on a place that people can gather, on a place that could potentially revitalize downtown and get more foot traffic. On a side note, I want to take this opportunity, and it may be a little off topic, but I saw a sign that said, community input matters. I want to remind everyone that there's a lot of the community whose input that we have heard. I've heard positives, I've heard negatives, I've heard people who are sort of agnostic about the whole thing. I've heard from a lot of people, and the entirety of that community input matters to me. I want to hear from everyone, and I think we need to encourage and get more people involved in the process, not just those that are able to come to all the council meetings, that are able to come to work sessions in the middle of the day, that are able to come to town halls on the weekends. There's a lot of people who aren't able to come and do those things. I've heard from some of them too, many of who are in favor. And I hope as we're talking about community input and we're talking about community process and the passion that we've seen here, that it continues on some of the other things that we're trying to deal with in Smyrna. When we're talking about affordable housing, many of which of the people that I know are opposed to this I've talked to, and for it I've talked to about affordable housing. We don't hear from many people about that. We don't hear from that. When a zoning comes up and we want to talk about affordability, what does that mean? We don't hear from people. We talk about sustainability, we talk about transit, we talk about any of these other things that I've heard that people are in favor of. We don't hear from people on those things. We're trying to make progress on many, many things. And we get fired up about some of this stuff because it's our downtown and we care about it, and that's great, and we should care about it. But we need to remember as we're talking about all these other things that we can come and we can debate and we can have these conversations, but then when we have that debate about some contentious zoning and the room clears out when we're talking about the city's budget, we should think about where is all that input coming from. And I hope that we all can do better, including myself, right? Before, I know I could have been more involved before. And I hope that we all can take that as far as what community input means and that it does matter, but the whole community input matters. I'll digress. I think the biggest thing that we can do for downtown is try to revitalize it, get people in there, provide some energy, and I think with a contract that hopefully will protect us, and I think given my reading of it and review of it, I think it does, and I think this is an opportunity to bring some people to downtown, bring some energy, bring some revitalization that hopefully will kickstart what I heard a lot of people say that they wanted in downtown. And I'll be done with that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Dr. Wheaton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to, say this has been a very interesting process to be a part of for sure over the past several months. We've been talking about, this brewery and all the various associated things related to the downtown and things like that. And we still clearly have a lot of work to do with some of the process things. But I just want to, first off, say thank you to all the residents over the past many months that have reached out to myself, reached out to, I guess, all of us, probably a lot of us get copied on those emails and those communications, whether they're in support or concern for the project. I've had a ton of conversations with residents that have been supportive of it. I've had a ton of conversations with people that have been less than supportive of it. And I've had, kind of like Councilman Wagner just indicated, I've had people that, they might have a minor concern, but at the end of the day, they may not care. What's fascinating is those people live all throughout the city. It's not just Ward 7 residents that I take those comments from, it's people that are everywhere that kind of feel all over the place. So I definitely want to thank the residents about that. I also want to thank the group discussion that I had with one of our local advocacy groups about that. Virtually, we had a good conversation several weeks ago, and I thought that was very helpful in really thinking about this more. And as well, in one of our committee of the whole meetings, we had the staff from Sewanee come up, and that was very helpful from a more community administrative focused conversation. That's actually very helpful to really understand in a community that Still Fire has operated in, what the pain points have been, what the upsides have been, what any downsides have been. As far as my own concerns, I've had many concerns with the initial proposal that are comparable to some people in objection. I had questions about size. I am encouraged to see the size of the proposal scaled back pretty substantially. I had significant concerns about the lack of food available and the reliance on food trucks exclusively. We talked at length about that. And I am generally happy that the food trucks aren't the only point of emphasis and that food has been better imagined into the proposal with multiple opportunities for other businesses to be a part of it. But there are other pressing considerations to this development that are very complex, that are very complicated, and I don't think, I know I certainly haven't, and I don't think any of my colleagues, whether they are for or against it, took those concerns lightly. They've required a lot of conversations and perspectives for us to consider. One immediate concern relates to the location of the brewery and why we would entertain a brewery on public land. That is an interesting question, but this is also an interesting property in that it is adjacent both to businesses and community space. So in context, it's kind of not just a island of public property, it's an island of public property that is surrounded by existing businesses. And businesses that we've talked about, discussed at length here, there are varying degrees of success and adequacy for the community and for what we would hope, I think what we would all hope a downtown to look like. I have heard concerns and questions about why not in other locations. And those questions are always interesting questions, but that's not a part of what we have to appeal to tonight. We have to appeal to what is before us and consider what is before us presently. I've also heard interesting concerns, and I don't know if these have been specific to me or to other people as well, but I've heard concerns about racial concerns at breweries in general. Those are concerns that I take very personally, and I take very seriously, and I think that is obvious why that would be. And I looked no further than Reformation Brewery down in Ward 7, which is down by the Chattahoochee, to see if there was any validation to this within our local community. I had opportunity to speak with several Black and Latino residents that I personally know that visit this brewery, and that I have seen post public comment on Google and other social media type sites about the brewery, and asked them specifically, hey, have you ever felt uncomfortable at Reformation Brewery? And they have all been overwhelmingly positive about Reformation Brewery. Now, make it clear, Reformation Brewery is not on the table as a decision tonight. Still Fire is. Fortunately, I have had opportunity to talk to one very good colleague of mine who has been to the applicant's concern over in Sewanee several times and has nothing but positive remarks about the place. Comments or concern that suggest that breweries are only owned by or only cater to white or Caucasian clientele is problematic to me because it suggests that minorities are not able to appreciate breweries or that breweries outright reject such diverse clientele. However, this feels like a bit of a slap in the face to those minority-owned breweries that are incredibly successful in the United States that I have reached out and talked to myself about this, and the minority customers that support breweries in general regardless of their ownership. I really fear that having public comments like that on record will make minority-owned businesses really consider the environment that they may be moving into if they are interested in Smyrna. Are there national problems? Perhaps so, but that again is not on the table for us to consider. We can consider, and we should rally around the powerful tool of the NDO, the non-discrimination ordinance, that we nearly unanimously approved to ensure that if there are concerns with race, with gender, with sex, with any other determining factors or characteristics that we identify with, that we hold them to task if this is approved. That is painfully important to me. That is painfully important to any business or any interest that may be interested in our community. And I definitely want to thank my colleagues, particularly Councilmember Wagner and Mayor Norton, for their instrumental work in getting that done a bit ago. I've also heard interesting proposals questioning, why not the use of the land for community center expansion. I want to state very clearly that as a council member representing residents that live further from downtown Smyrna than any other residents, I have deep concerns about continued use of general fund taxpayer dollars to expand hard infrastructure in our downtown. A primary goal of mine has been to ensure more accessibility to community services distributed beyond the few square miles of our present downtown area. My residents are deeply concerned and opposed to broad use of these city funds to continue development in this space. I am proud to say that we're working towards plans to address this and look forward to sharing more details and having broader conversation about that soon. But it is hard for me to consider or imagine right now going back to the residents in this geographic location that I support and that I am proud to serve on this council, and to say to them, no, we are going to consider investing many, many, many millions of more dollars into this area and sacrificing their needs. It is abundantly clear that there's more work to do. And I believe that we have all known that there is more work to do. I look forward to continuing that work however we proceed. But for me, I believe this brewery is a compelling idea. I appreciate passion. I appreciate debate, so long as that debate is honest, respectful, and clear. But at the end of the debate, a decision must be made. And whatever that result, I hope that we all stay engaged for both support and critique, really referencing back to Councilmember Wagner's point. If you're supportive of something, please reach out. If you are critical of something, please reach out. But we need to hear those voices, whether it is support or critique. If you feel slighted, reach out. If you feel left out, show up. If you want to work together, let us know. That's the only way we can truly make hard decisions and seek to improve the community together. Let's not rush to rash judgments about who loves or doesn't love Smyrna, or who knows better because they've lived here a few years longer than others. Let's just continue to rise above the easy divisions, but work hard towards a united city that even in our disagreement, we love, we value, and respect all the different roles we play in this community.
Very well said, Dr. Wheaton. Councilmember Pickens.
Thanks, Mayor. As has been said tonight, this has basically been discussed for the better part of the last year. We've had some great discussions and feedback on this that has really shaped the size and scope of the project, adding better food options, reducing the size of the building, all things that people have asked for. And it's been well discussed. I'm very excited for this new addition to the downtown. I think not only will it be an economic boom for the downtown, but it'll also bring more people. Like, can we imagine the change of bringing another 1,000 or 2,000 people to the downtown every month, and what kind of new businesses, new restaurants, new growth will come out of it? I think this will also give the people a gathering place. Something that's been discussed a lot recently is how this is considered a third place and a place for people to gather and hang out. Right now, for the most part, they have to leave the city for this kind of place. They go to the Battery, they go to Marietta, they go to the West Side, which all have breweries, entertainment places, and local gathering spots. But I think the biggest desire of the community is they want to be here. It's one of the biggest things that I hear is, why do we have to leave the city for X? Why can't Smyrna have this when all the other local areas have it? We want to spend our money in our city and stay here. So I'm proud to cast a vote for it tonight, and I think this will be great improvement for the downtown.
Thank you, Mr. Pickens. Mr. Lindley, Mr. Welch and Ms. Wilkinson have requested to speak. Would you like them to speak before you waive? Did you want to say anything before or you want to wait to close?
I'll close.
Okay, Ms. Wilkinson.
Okay, thank you. I think just listening to some of the other comments and saying that the property there that we're talking about was always meant to be like a commercial space, and that we haven't used it. I guess I look at the 30 years that we have been using it, and did we put money into it and fix it up? I mean, there's so many ideas that could be done or could have been done in terms of it being more attractive and more desirable. But I do think that we have definitely used that space. Every time the city plans an event, I believe that it's very successful, and that space is used for the events that happen down in the downtown. So I guess I challenge that, because I do see it being used, and I think it is definitely a space. I mean, I guess I look at it and think we should have maybe more events in the area, or so. I do think it brings people in, and from other cities. When we have events, Wolfstock, Jonquil festivals, all kinds of things that we've had, our concerts, and I think we've been through a period of time with the COVID where we haven't been having as many of those public events, but I think it is a very vibrant, active area. I just think we just never put money into fixing it or doing something nice there. But I think it's a valuable piece of property to the citizens of Smyrna in terms of the location. And so, okay, thank you for allowing me.
Mr. Lindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the majority of the council in their comments. I think as we've weighed into this over the last 9 months or so, there has been much debate. One of the curious things to me, to Councilman, some foreshadowing.
Did you just promote him or demote him to Congressman? Not sure which. Is what has sparked, I would say, intrigue, comment, and engagement in our community over the last year. Councilman Gould and I were discussing earlier, one of the biggest projects in our community that I believe is around $250 million over by the brewery. It's the Gateway development that's coming in that reapproved sometime last year. Not a single person showed up to comment on that. We got some comments via email, but they were generally supportive or mainly questions. So it has been very, very intriguing over the last couple of months, and passion has certainly been there by some. I think is noted by folks up here tonight. I think, and I like to thank our community. I'm one of the native son up here. Our community is better than what we've seen out of some on all sides of this. There is no need for some of the rancor that exists. We are all of us, even those two that have clearly stated they're not going to be moving forward in this direction. But we are all up here trying to do what we believe is right for our community. To that end, I'm guided tonight on several points. One, which I understand it's a fact, so it's hard sometimes to grapple with it. But if you stroll through this building, there are at least 3, arguably 4, different plans for this downtown. And I remember, Mr. Welch may have lived here then. I know Mr. Cochran was involved in it, but I remember when they came in and they tore it all down. And there were people that showed up at the city hall where Zuka's is now, and they held their little signs, and they were absolutely against change. And if they hadn't done it then, we would still look like that blighted little city on the side of Atlanta Road. So thank God they did it. But in doing it, they came up with 4 different plans over a short amount of time, just 28 years ago.
4 plans. And the curious thing, we even sent out one of them as a welcome card to new residents, and it arguably is the 5th plan. All of them, every one of them. And I would remind you, it's the same mayor, and at that era, it was largely the same council. It all called for something on that spot. That is why. And we leap back for a moment to the great debate over green space where the roundabout is. One of the biggest problems for me in that area was you couldn't use it. It was over landscaped. By contrast, this piece of property, and contrary to what we heard just a moment ago, people do not come here from all over the area to utilize the gravel grass lot aside a 4-lane highway next to the busiest train track on the eastern seaboard. I'm sorry, that's just not a reality. I know it may be for some, but you don't see people there unless it's overflow parking or Wolf Fest. And this council just created a vast new green space to absorb some of that, in my view. So I guess what I'm guided by on that fact is history is on our side on this. The forefathers that had the guts to remake downtown said, no, we're going to put something there. At one point, it was going to be a combined police fire station. Then it was going to be a police station. And then in 2 proposals, it was going to be retail space. None of it came to fruition. The city moved north. So that's how we've ended up with this space. So the question before us now, of course, is do we, as an elected body with massive amounts of input from the community, do we believe it is the wise thing to do? Which brings me to sort of the guiding point and principle. The bold study is what I've leaned in hard on. It was commissioned by the last government, the last mayor, the last city council, some of which sit before you tonight. And it sought to ask several big picture questions that I certainly heard about it in the campaign of 2019, and I think everybody up here would have to acknowledge that is, what is going on in downtown? Why aren't people coming? Why won't they stay? Why can't we have anchor businesses that then attract other businesses? So they went out, they talked to a lot of folks, they leaned in hard on their wealth of experience in looking at a lot of cities that were doing what we are now doing in some ways is catch up. So I'm leaning in hard on that. And the reality is to draw people downtown beyond municipal activities like going to the library, going to the community center, or coming to City Hall, you got to have a reason to come down here. Most folks don't traffic in those places, with the exception of maybe the library and the community center. But when we look at the 55,000 people that live here, we've got to give them a reason, and it is wholly expected that if we're going to expect businesses to locate here, there's got to be some reasons to come to downtown. And economic development is one of the major drivers. This council had a planning strategy retreat right before all of us were sworn in. And one of the major discussions was on economic development. And I dare say, among the majority here, I don't know if it was a consensus, a unanimous sort of stance, but everybody believed we've got to get smart about how we're attracting businesses and keeping our people here in Smyrna. And I think this checks a box. We heard a compelling account. I've heard it a number of times from Ms. Worthy. I think a lot of her, we trust her. She has got a very impressive track record both in this city and in Sandy Springs. And it simply all checks out to me. It is something that will drive people to stay in Smyrna. And that is, I believe, one of our charges, is to deliver for the residents things that they're asking for. And there's a long list of things that they're asking for. And I think a number of folks have addressed the future growth of city buildings, community center, what have you, and I could not agree more with also representing one of four up here that represent South Cobb Drive, we need some geographic equality in terms of where our city buildings are and their purposes. I represent Ward 3. I represent downtown, but I would not support yet another government building downtown. And until the last week or so, I have not even really heard anybody seriously contemplate even a need there in terms of a community center. Understanding that we're all thinking long-term, but it's a very large city, and there are entire sections of our city that have no city facilities other than some of our first responder facilities. So, and lastly, in sort of closing, I think I too had some concerns. I am appreciative of the being interested by the folks at Stillfire. I think they have a compelling story. It, for me, registered mightily that the folks that run the city of Suwanee came and basically, no offense, Aaron, but they gave a better pitch for a brewery in their community, and he's pretty slick. But it was compelling, and again, their intent is what ours is, which is to have a vibrant downtown with lots of people in it. So, Mr. Mayor, for those reasons, I support this plan. Again, I believe it's been thoroughly reviewed and studied, and with that, a motion do pass.
Have a motion do pass, seconded by Mr. Gould. All those in favor, please vote. That's approved 5-2 with Mr. Welch and Ms. Wilkinson voting in the negative. You know, I'll just say that no matter how you thought about this or where you stood on this issue, I'm very proud of this community. I'm proud of the passion. I'm proud of the involvement. I mean, we had a town hall here and you couldn't even get in the door. It was so packed. Many of you were there. And I'm also proud of this council. As has been stated, everybody on this council does what they think is right, and they're up here every day working for that. And I may not agree with Mr. Welch today, but we were just at a HOA meeting the other day where we talked about we've got the mutual respect that we may not agree today, but we're going to continue moving forward, and there'll be several other points that we agree on. And we've served a long time together, and we've had very few disagreements along the way. So. Disagreement does not mean disrespect. And I'll say one other thing about this vote. Lots of times when people don't agree with what's being proposed, they say, well, the elected body is not listening to me. I can promise you, every single one of us up here listens to everything and hears what you all are saying, whatever side you're on. But we may just not agree sometimes, and that's okay. So that's all I had. I'm just proud of the community and proud of this council. The next item is commercial building permits. We have none. Item 8 is the consent agenda, and I'll ask Mr. Bennett to please read the consent agenda for council approval.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item A, MIN 2021-96, approval of the December 16th, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. Item B, MIN 2021-95, approval of the December 20th, 2021 pre-council meeting minutes. Item C, MIN 2021-97, approval of the December 20th, 2021 mayor and council meeting minutes. Item D, CON 2022-01, ratify and approve an agreement with Environmental Difference Staffing, 2470 Windy Hill Road, Southeast, Suite 442, Marietta, Georgia, 30067, for temporary supplemental personnel for Public Works to assist in maintaining service levels for sanitation, water, streets, etc., as needed in the department, and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documentation. Item E, 2022-001, approval to use council chambers for Creekwood at Vining's annual Homeowners Association meeting to be held on Sunday, February 20th, 2022, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Item F, 2022-011, Authorization of street closures for the Atlanta Track Club Hearts and Souls 10K on Saturday, February 5th, 2022, from 7:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. Item G, 2022-012, authorization of variance request for filming over multiple dates in 2022 at 3631 Crestview Drive, Smyrna, Georgia, and 3660 Wisteria Lane, Smyrna, Georgia, by applicant Universal Content Productions, LLC. Item H, AGR 2022-01, approval of the 2022 Business Associate Agreement with Oak Ridge Insurance for the management of the city's health insurance policies and employee benefits, and authorize the mayor to sign and execute all related documents. Item I, 2022-019, approval of 2022 City of Smyrna community events and corresponding street closings from April 2022 through December 2022, as was proposed on January 13th, 2022. And item J, 2022-018, approval for Atkins Park, 2840 Atlanta Road Southeast, Smyrna, to host the 10th annual Smyrna Oyster Fest and extend patio area to include sidewalk and 7 parking spaces directly connected to and in front of Atkins Park's permanent patio space on February 4th, 2022 from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., February 5th, 2022 from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and February 6th, 2022 from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and authorize the mayor to sign and execute any related documents.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Do I have a motion to approve? I do, by Mr. Lindley. Do I have a second? Mr. Gould, all those in favor, please vote.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, before we vote, Ms. Wilkinson has a question on the consent
I
agenda.
just heard him on I heard Mr. Bennett talking about the dates on the last item, and my paper says a different date, so I just want to clarify that, which is correct.
Like we spoke about in pre-council, the dates were misprinted on the original one that we got, so the dates are February 4th, 5th, and 6th,
Okay.
as we talked about before.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before we vote on the consent agenda? Okay. And that's approved 7-0. Thank you. The last item, or not the last item, the next item is ward and committee reports. We'll start tonight with Mr. Glenn Pickens.
Thanks, Mayor. No report this evening.
Mr. Wagner.
No report this evening.
Mr. Lindley.
No report.
Mr. Welch. No report. Ms. Wilkinson.
Not really a report, but I have a question. So in our meeting upstairs, it came up about communication about things that were happening, and it was, I think Councilman Welch mentioned something that he just learned about at a public meeting on, I guess on Thursday night after our meeting, that he learned about after the meeting for the first time. And I feel that that's happening a lot, and I heard tonight at the beginning of this meeting about some kind of plan for South Cobb Drive, and I haven't seen it. It was the first time I heard about it, as well as other things that to do with the whole the vote of the land sale and the land sale agreement and the conveyance of the property. There's been a lot of things through this process that haven't been communicated with me or with me at a council meeting. So I would like to see that improved, that communication.
Thank you, Ms. Wilkins, and I'll address South Cobb Drive. I mean, that is, we approved a concept, or concepts were put forward to the council, the last council in 2017, and you and I have had several conversations about which plan we like best and which one we want to show the constituents, and that was the only.
Oh, okay.
I'm not
I thought
talking
you were
about any
talking
other
about another
plan. I'm
plan.
talking about the one that we're kind of resubmitting to the community that plan.
Okay.
Because we're now in the posture where we're going to know about our funding here probably in the next several months, and so it's time to start bringing this out to the public so that they can comment and tell us what they want and be educated on some of the ideas. So that was the only That was what I meant with South Cobb Drive.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I will ask to, have you brought that big thing back? You have? Oh, okay.
Still in my garage. I'm sorry. Thank you for reminding me.
Because I've had several citizens also reach out to me about wanting to see the plan, so, okay.
Yeah, my apologies. It's in my garage.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick thing. Councilman Lindley and I had a chance to have a online meeting today with some folks from the state and our local CSB, Community Service Board, just to learn some about the co-responder programs that are being piloted in other areas in the state. And basically what that is folks with mental health training, clinicians, can assist our public safety personnel when they encounter somebody that's in a mental health crisis. So we just had a chance to learn a little bit, and we'll get with Chief Sagants and see where their hot points are, and maybe there's a match for some of the services that are available, and see if we can help our public safety folks when they're in difficult spots, and obviously equally as important, help residents or other folks who are in their mental health crisis. So we're learning what's out there and see what we can do. Thanks.
Dr. Wheaton.
No comment this evening.
Joe.
No comment.
Mr. Cochran. Ms. Heather. Jill? Okay. Item 10 is show cause hearings. We don't have any tonight. Item 11 is citizen input. We have several who are signed up for citizen input this evening. We'll start tonight with Kay Clapper, 30, I can't read the address. When you come up, if you would read the address, please. Plumcrest Road. I'm not sure the number. Not here? Okay. We'll move on to Deborah Tompkins, 789 Church Street. Okay. Pat Burns, 10 Concord Road. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you get up. My apologies. Deborah Tompkins, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Deborah Tompkins, 789 Church Street. So thank you for hearing me. I really appreciated all the work and the attention all of council has given to this. It's been a phenomenal process. I had written this out, but I know the vote has been taken already. But one of my biggest concerns with this that I am still opposed to, that's what I was going to speak to, was actually selling that land as opposed to whatever, because I just listened to Councilman Wagner and your thought about that was part of my concern. I understand the deed restrictions and all the restrictions that have been placed as part of this, but I felt like the right of first refusal doesn't, in fact, ensure an ability for the city to purchase this back if we need to down the road at some point. And I do feel like that removes an ability down the road for whatever reason, when breweries aren't the new great thing for every downtown, or something else is necessary or needed or whatever, future generations and people down the road won't have an ability to pivot, change. It will remove that ability because this right does not ensure an ability for a city to repurchase that property if it needs to. And so that was my biggest concern and really one of my major oppositions to this whole concept. I appreciate the proposal that Stillfire made, particularly in the town hall. I appreciate what he wants to do and intends to do for this community. I know it's very positive and the community is looking for economic development. I just felt like there's vacant space in the Market Village area, which is the commercial area mainly right now. And I know in the meeting, Ms. Worthy encouraged people to just look at what's already the breweries in Marietta. And I always felt like something like that could be placed in the vacant buildings in downtown, and you have a gathering place, a brewery, a social spot, a third spot. That's not requiring the food trucks and the external silos that this proposal may so it doesn't fit with going into Market Village, but I felt that was a more appropriate location for a gathering spot in a brewery. This being placed with the designated green area, in my view, was completely contrary at that location. But the biggest is just the selling of the property. That was my biggest concern, but I do appreciate what the intent here. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Pat Burns, 10 Concord Road, Southwest.
My name is Pat Burns from 10 Concord Road and Ward 4 homeowner. I have 2 points to make. Smyrna sold West Spring Street property. How's that working out? No foot traffic, as we all admit, and no shops. It's plagued by high rent and storefront turnover. Selling property might not be in the best business interest for Smyrna. My second point is going to need some attention because it's a fairly complicated parable, but I think you can follow along. City Hall is like a man with a demanding mistress. The mistress is still fire. The man is Mr. City, and his ex-wife's name is Miss Public. Mistress demands a big house owned by Public. Mr. City doesn't care. He wants mistress. Plus, mistress wants a bigger front yard. Mr. City says, okay, and it can have a stage and for entertaining, plus I'll build you a parking deck. And we can share it with Methodist. Wiley, Mr. City takes the money to build the front yard from the ex-wife's South Cobb Drive sploss purse. The mistress, Miss Stillfire, continues to vacillate on what her house will look like and what will be in it. But it has to be built on Miss Public's land, or mistress will break up with Mr. City. Lastly, Mistress Stillfire wants her children to have a place to play and demands Mr. City also build a playground for her. Mr. City is willing to do anything for his mistress, even selling the soul of the city.
Okay, Montserrat Knowlton, 1367 Poplar Point.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, good evening. I have a total number on the petitions that we, Smart Smyrna, had collected, and it's a total of 1,449 signers. You have chosen to ignore these voices and proceed with something that is not fully known to Smyrna residents. Your residents are just not accounted for. You just disregard them. Shame on each of you who vote for this proposal without requiring more definite answers for the benefit of the taxpayer citizens. Smart Smyrna will continue to press for truth and put forth for the best information in the name of good governance. You should want to do more for your constituents, not less. Do more, be more. After all, that is why we put you in those seats, to represent the wishes of all for the good of our city, including wards 4 and 5. Thank you. I had another, this was for Ms., a person that couldn't come tonight. But I wanted to read my own thoughts about children in peril in Smyrna. The Village Green has been an area that has positively contributed to the development of the children of Smyrna. The community center offers a variety of sports and activities, and all these keep our youth physically fit as well as socially fit. The library, with an extensive collection of books, DVDs, etc., offers many children's programs to enhance the learning of the children of citizens of Smyrna. The children's playground has taught young children to enhance physical activity and share social skills with other children. At the Veterans Memorial, children can learn about honor and ultimate sacrifice suffered by Smyrna residents in defense of what our country stands for. This is the environment that has enriched the children of Smyrna. It is not a good location for a beer and spirits factory. The present council wants to keep an open area where all-day drinking becomes the activity of the area. This is not in the best interest of the formative years of Smyrna's children. Children of Smyrna, hear my cry. I cry for you. Citizens of Smyrna, hear my cry. I cry for you and the future of the youth of your town. How can this council and mayor justify economic development against the detriment of our children's development? Smyrna is already enjoying an economic success.
Ms. Knowlton, you're
The
past your
location-
time. Please
The
wrap up.
location is wrong. Find a suitable location for this industrial beer factory. Thank you.
Cheryl Hodgins, 1480 Memory Lane.
Actually, I have to tell you, I have to tell you, most of the questions were answered by y'all folks. I was very impressed that you all listened, both sides. Very cool, very intelligent, which is really cool. Like, I'm not going to say this, but I do think you're more intelligent than some of the people that run our nation. That's just an aside. Shouldn't say that. But I do think it was very, very well thought out. And I really wish you success. I love breweries. I was kind of against it. My husband's for it. So there you go. Just like we vote in the elections. But I have to tell you, and I know it's marketing, what y'all did there, but I go by, like I teach in Marietta, right? Just teach yoga, not kids. And I ain't never seen Glover Brewery looking like that. I mean, Hair Brewery, Red Hair Brewery, Glover Brewery, a lot of times they're empty unless there is, that must have all been a function, like somebody, a business held a function there, or it was the opening, or maybe it was one of their festivals. During festivals, and I don't know if you'll be able to have events there, but if people schedule events, then it looks like that. But those breweries are dead, except maybe toward the evening, or else if there's, and I really can't see people saying, I'm going to go to the brewery, except for me, because I like breweries. But I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong, because I really want you to succeed. I was kind of hoping you'd go to Wade's, like where Wade's was. So I really hope you succeed, and I really hope all the positive things that y'all have said come to fruition, because I really love Smyrna. And I did actually learn a lot about how other folks would like community centers outside of this area. So thank you for sharing. And that's about it. I don't say anything intelligent, but I just had to, I couldn't sleep tonight unless I said that. But I will come to your brewery, even though I voted against it.
Thank you, ma'am. Christy Anderson, 1081 Creekwood Circle. Doesn't look like Christy's still here. Marie Smith, 1215 Bank Street. Ms. Smith? No. Ryan Taylor, 3790. I can't remember. I can't read that address. No comment. Okay, thank you. Richard Pesha, 2664 Round Circle. Is he here? Okay. And Jenny Barty, who did not leave an address. All right, that concludes our citizen input. There's no other business brought before this body. I declare us adjourned at 9:16. Thank you.